We've had a 40-year deflationary trend that I think ended in March of 2020. Everyone's still investing like we're in that old 40-year downtrend. I haven't seen anything that would indicate to me that politicians are suddenly getting more responsible. Look at Doge. Now, that was a nice idea. Oh, we're going to save $2 trillion. No, we're going to save $1 trillion. Well, maybe we'll save $300 billion. And then Elon says, I give up. So we're already seeing some indications that they're leaning towards the big print. They'll run as long as they can until the whole system implodes, and then we'll be forced to restructure it based on sound money. Everyone says, well, it's not different this time. Yeah, it is different this time. When you have a new invention that changes the rules of the game, it is different. There's a way out. You can protect yourself. We can fix it. We're all on the same team, and we're going to fix it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rob Wallace, and today I am very grateful to be joined by Larry Lepard. Larry is an experienced investor, a sound money advocate, and the author of this book right here, The Big Print. Larry, you've been one of my favorite voices in Bitcoin over the last 3 years or so since I found you, and you've just been, you've been everywhere.
I appreciate that. Yeah, well, I have been everywhere. I mean, when you're trying to sell books and spread the word, I probably overexposed myself. And I've had a hard time saying no to any podcast just because I like to help podcasters get going. So, and the mission of the book is to orange pill the world. So, I just figure one guy's podcast may hit some people that another guy's may not. So I tend to kind of do them all. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. To orange pill the world is the mission. And I recently heard you say that one of the objectives of this book is to get people angry, right?
A little bit. I mean, it's because that's sometimes that's what drives behavior. I mean, if you're just sitting there, fat and happy or depressed, is just anger turned in on yourself. I mean, I think a lot of people are hurting and they don't necessarily know why they're hurting. And, there's actually a very explainable reason why they're hurting. We know, I know, Bitcoiners know, but the average normie probably doesn't fully understand how bad the Fed is and what they've done. And so, the book tried to lay that out and explain to them why it's important for them to learn about Bitcoin, because it's a protest vote against their system. I mean, if we're successful, we'll take their system down. And it's also a self-defense mechanism to protect yourself, because if you're trying to save money and any other vehicle, you're getting diluted in a crazy fashion because they keep printing. So yeah, and sometimes anger will spur people on to start taking action. So I want people to take action.
Yeah, and let's talk about that moment for you personally. I think in the book you make it clear 2008 was the
that was it. Yeah, that was really it. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, it's you grow up, and at least in my case, I grew up learning about investing in business school and capital asset pricing model, interest rates and macro and all that stuff. And it's kind of like when 2008 occurred, what it really was a big socialist experiment for the banks. I mean, the banks should have failed. They should have let everything fail. But of course, they took the view that if they did that, the whole economy would enter another depression. And they might have been right. But and so they bailed everything out, and they did it with printed money and 0% interest rates. And we printed money before. They printed money, in the Depression. They printed a little bit in World War II, after World War II. But I mean, this level of printing was just like an entirely new order of magnitude. And they've had 0% interest rates before. They were briefly that low in the Depression. But since that time, they've never been that low. And it's just an enormous distortion of capitalism to do those two things. I mean, it just turns everything on its head. And as the book describes, it actually makes the system incredibly unfair to those who aren't, near the money printer or don't have the ability to borrow cheap. I mean, one of the greatly unjust things in our society is that Wall Street can borrow at prime, and sometimes prime is as low as 0 or 1 or 2%. And that the average person has to borrow from these credit card companies that are charging 25%. So it's just usury. I mean, we used to have usury laws. There used to be a cap on how high interest rates could go, but we don't have that anymore either, because frankly, the banks own the place. So it's an unfair system, and that really makes me angry, because I see the country I grew up in, and it was a fairer, better country than the one that my 20-year-old kids are growing up in. And so, I think that's probably more than anything else what spurred me to write the book. I just thought, I understand this very clearly. And because I understand it, I felt compelled to explain it, and explain it in a way that, somebody who's, like when I tested the book out on some people early days, I started to. In fact, my wife was reading. She said, "Well, what's the Federal Reserve?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." Yeah, I got to explain that, right? I mean, because I really want it to be readable by anybody. I want any American that knows that they're. I mean, there's one thing all Americans know, and that is they go to the grocery store and their bill's going up. It's driving them nuts. Drives me nuts. Drives everybody nuts. It's terrible, right? But very few people can really fully understand how and why it happens because it's subtle, it's complex, and if you listen to Elizabeth Warren, it's because the grocery stores are greedy,
Hmm.
which is not the case at all. But so I thought, well, somebody's got to explain this, and that's why I decided to write it.
Yeah, and just to draw some parallels, I'd say 2008 is what sort of opened my eyes to this game as
Same
well,
thing.
right?
Yeah,
I was a kid in college studying international relations,
yeah.
and I thought I wanted to be a diplomat or something. And then I saw Hank Paulson get on TV and say that we need to give the banks $1 trillion, or else we're going to
The
have
ATMs
tanks in
won't
the
work.
streets. Yeah,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
he actually said martial law.
Oh, did
He
he?
said
I missed that part, but I don't doubt that he said it. Yeah.
yeah, and I that just rubbed me the complete wrong way, and so I just
Right.
went deep down the rabbit hole, looked into the wars, where did money come from, and just opened my eyes to Ron Paul and the hard money
Right. Yeah.
revolution.
Ron Paul was a key for a lot of us. I was a big supporter of his, and of course he was everything he did was based on Austrian economics. And so once you go down that direction, you start reading Rothbard and von Mises, and you really kind of understand that. Oh my God, we've been living in this broken system that's really kind of a lie, and it started in 1913 with the creation of the Fed, which is really just a money cartel set with price fixing and to benefit the rich. And then it got monstrously worse in 71 because at least until 71 there was some loose link between gold and the dollar, and of course when Nixon broke that, then all hell broke loose. And one of my favorite charts in the book is early on in the book. There's a chart that shows kind of inflation from 1789 to 1971, and it's going up for sure, but it's little blips, and they tend to be around wars, and they were somewhat self-correcting. And then in 71, the thing just takes off like a rocket ship and goes straight up.
Yeah.
And so, because when we went on a total fiat money standard, government determined they could print whatever they wanted. There really are just no restraints. I mean, and that's only proven, to be worse and worse. I mean, I thought the COVID print was pretty amazing. I thought the amount they created was amazing. I thought the increase in the expenses was amazing. And what happens, and this is the part that's so interesting, Rob, is it's like a ratchet. It never goes backwards. The expenses okay, so like in 2008, there's a good example. So 2008, all right, well, we had to save the banks. We had to print this money. We had to drop rates to zero. I get it. Okay, so now it's 2011. The banks aren't close to dying. The economy's kind of working. It's not robust, but it's working. Why are we continuing to keep money at zero? Why are we continuing to do QE? Do you know what I mean? Why aren't we, and the answer is the system's broken, and they wanted to benefit the insiders and reflate the system. And same is true with COVID. I mean, they printed all this money and they spent a ton of money. The government spending in COVID went up a couple $1 trillion, and you would think, all right, I get that, but maybe after COVID was over, you'd take the spending back down again, right? Because we're not in an emergency anymore. But no, and we ratcheted. That's now the new baseline, and it's only going to get bigger. So, it's just it's what Lynn says. I mean, the train isn't stopping, and they just, sadly, the government, the structure of the government we have, is just going to make this thing worse and worse until it kind of completely comes off the rails. And that's because nobody's willing to face the elephant in the room, which is that we're bankrupt. We can't, and we're living off credit cards, and we can't keep spending more and expect it to last.
Yeah.
And eventually, there's a chapter in the book, as you know, called Stein's Law. If something can't go on forever, it's going to end. Well, it feels like we're getting closer and closer to that end point.
And in the book, I mean, you describe it as a rigged game, right?
It really is. Yeah.
And the Fed is the linchpin of this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But my question for you is, do you think that the Fed is a evil institution, or is it just a bunch of 12 guys sitting there think they're doing the right thing for the country?
It's mixed. I mean, I think it's evil in the sense that I think they're smart enough to know that they can't do what they're trying to do, and they like the power they have. And when there's a part, where Greenspan says he really enjoyed being the power of being the Fed head, and I'm pretty sure Jerome Powell likes that too. I mean, so I think these guys are too smart not to understand the implications of what they're doing. and that they're kind of working for the insiders. And then post being on the Fed, they go out and they get huge fees. I mean, Janet Yellen gets $7 million of speaking fees. I mean, what does she have to say that's worth $7 million? I mean, that's just kind of a backdoor bribe. So, I mean, first of all, the one thing I will say, some people say, well, what would you have done if you were in the Fed? How could you do it? I mean, nobody, God himself couldn't do the Fed well. I mean, the interest rate should be a market set rate, and what it does is it should balance the supply of savings with the demand for investments. So interest rates should be discovered in the free market. There really shouldn't be, a Federal Reserve. I mean, the whole notion and the fact that there is a Federal Reserve is what got us into all this trouble because, by backstopping the banks, it led to perpetual inflation. It said to the banks, just party on, don't worry about it. If things go wrong, we'll print money to bail you out. And so we've been in kind of a perpetually inflationary environment, which, in the 70s it blew up a lot, but Volcker got it back under control with high interest rates. 80s and 90s we had some really good productivity gains, and we were, in a deflationary trend in terms of interest rates, so it was less noticeable that we were inflating. But now it's turned the other way, and as in the last cycle we had inflation of 9%. I mean, I think this next cycle up is going to be higher still. So, and I don't see, I mean, if something were changing, if I saw fiscal responsibility in Congress or an adult conversation about saying, we've got to reduce some of these entitlements, or an adult conversation about saying, we're spending way too much on defense. We can accomplish the same objective with less cost. Then I would think, well, all right, maybe it's not, a broken system. Maybe we can fix it. But to be fair, you just don't see any of those things happening. I mean, again, when I was writing the book, I was last year, as you'll recall, we had a presidential election, and I was watching Team Blue and Team Red argue with each other, and I thought, these guys are arguing about all this stupid stuff that doesn't matter, and there's a bigger problem here, which is the monetary problem. I mean, you had a debate between Kamala and Trump, and nobody mentioned the debt. I mean, nobody. It's probably the biggest threat to the country right now that exists, and yet it's kind of kicked off into the side of the room, and nobody's talking about it. Even Trump and Warren are saying maybe we should just get rid of the debt limit. And they probably will. I mean, it's always been kind of a joke anyway. But I mean, the point is, they'll try. I mean, witness Doge. I mean, noble effort. Good aims, et cetera, et cetera. But even Elon got fed up with it and said, you just can't do this. I mean, it's just not going to work. It's also just baked in the cake, and it's a very, very broken system. And so I think the history of broken systems like that is they'll run as long as they can until the whole system implodes, and then we'll be forced to restructure it, based on sound money. At least I hope it's based on sound money. If we don't, then the pain's going to continue.
And so with your platform, you are talking to all different kinds of people from all different kinds of walks of life. And I think this plays well into the fourth turning, generational theory, the interplay between millennials and boomer parents, and the younger Zoomers and the Gen X in between, And so in speaking to different people, who do you find most receptive to this message of Bitcoin and hard money, and who just gets it when you first explain it to them, and who has the hardest time?
That's a great question. I think, well, obviously it tends to be more people who aren't in the financial system and haven't benefited massively from the broken system. I mean, the people on Wall Street, boomers who have made a lot of money, they're not very receptive to it. They like the money they made. They think they deserve it. They don't like something that, fundamentally criticizes the system. I gave a speech in front of a bunch of older guys who were very rich, and I criticized Ben Bernanke, and they came up to me afterwards. They were very, very upset. And I was just like, what? So to answer your question directly, I mean, I think the millennials get it. I think the Jack Mahler, generation, my kids get it. I mean, and that's because they're really suffering. They can't buy houses. Their cost of living is going up. They see, they're racked by inflation, and they're logical. And so, anybody who's logical, I mean, you can, if you explain it to them, and, this is an innovation, Bitcoin, that is, this is an innovation. It's a form of money with a limited supply. The problem that we've got with this inflation is that we've had unlimited supply of money, and therefore, we've got to transition the system to a system where the government can't print money. They tend to get it pretty easily. And by the way, it's probably your generation. I'm not sure how old you are, but you guys are the generation that will fix the world, because it's kind of like, it's clearly broken. We don't like it. It's not working for us. We hate the boomers. They've stolen our future, and many of them have. And hey, what the hell? This isn't right. The thing to remember though is it's the boomers are a big voting bloc still, and they take the biggest share of the government expenses are Medicare and Social Security, which badly need reform. But of course you can't touch that because you lose all the boomer vote, and the politicians need that. But here's the thing. I mean, the boomers aren't going to live forever, and so that the math is going to change here, and they're going to be more millennial voters and less boomer voters, and over time these problems are going to get tackled, and then perhaps if there's a monetary event, which I think there could be, and by a monetary event I mean either high inflation or even a failure of the currency. The younger generation can say, well, that didn't work. How do we return to sound money?
I think the threat here though is that, I mean, as we just saw in New York City this
Well,
week,
I thought
the
you'd
younger
go there,
generation
right?
also leans towards socialism.
Absolutely.
They tend to think that the government can hand them goodies, and that will make their problems go away.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad you went there because that's the flip of it all. I mean, there are two. I mean, look, I don't particularly like Bernie Sanders and AOC, but some of the comments that Bernie makes, he's not wrong about the system being broken and unfair. I mean, he's not wrong about that. He's wrong about the solution, but he's not wrong about it being broken and unfair. I think that sound money people in the middle to left, or in the middle to right, or wherever we are. I mean, I'm a libertarian, but and liberal people, in the AOC and Bernie camp can actually kind of agree on one thing, and that is this is broken. This is really messed up. Now, sadly, those people on the far left have convinced folks that it's because of the billionaires. And look, the billionaires got a lot of their gains unfairly, and so that's true. But even if you tax them all to death, that wouldn't solve the problem. The underlying way to solve the problem is to definancialize the economy by having sound money and stop wasting all these resources on this fiat system. So, but you're right. I mean, it's a fear and a concern of mine that some young people are going to argue that what we should do is go to socialism. Now, the thing I think they will see rather quickly is that it just doesn't work. And furthermore, if we really go to socialism, in fact, I've kind of game theoried this out of my head. Let's say, Trump and the red team, goes through 4 years, and at the end of it, the economy is still doing okay. Unemployment's not high, but we've got really high inflation. Inflation is kind of raging, and young people are still hurting. I could see them losing, and the history of these fourth turnings is that the voters they always tend to want to vote for the other. Just throw the bum out, whoever it is. My life's not getting better. Well, I'll try the other side, and of course, when that election comes up, the blue team is going to say, well, these evil people, they're cutting taxes, they're giving themselves all kinds of breaks, and we need to tax the shit out of them, and we need to give you bigger stimmy checks, and we need to forgive all these student loans, and by the way, these things are going to be very expensive, but don't worry, we'll print the money to do it, because Stephanie Kelton's now the Treasury Secretary, right? She's the woman who leads the MMT camp, and I mean, you want to talk about trashing the currency. I mean, that'll do it. I mean, my hypothesis is that the currency is going to fail sometime in the mid 2030s. And so, this term runs out in 2028, and the Democrats win, and they come in and they start doing all these programs that they can't afford, and they print money to do it. And, Bitcoin's at 500,000 and gold's at 6,000 or 10,000 or whatever it might be. And pretty soon everyone, Gresham's law says that when it becomes obvious to everybody that the currency is not sound and it's going to be printed into oblivion, people just abandon it. And that's how you get, Venezuela, or that's how you get Weimar Germany. And so I think they're not, they're tail events today, but I think they're going to become more and more probable events if the politics unfold in the way that I just described.
And another interesting driving force of this era that's really just emerged in the last 2 years is AI, right? And it's been fun, it's been cute.
Well, that's
We've
right.
had chat boxes and image generation, but now it seems as if, it's coming
Well,
for your jobs, right?
that's what Jeff Booth points out. I mean, it's his brilliant insight is that we're trying to run a monetary system that requires increased growth and increased credit expansion on a technology-based economy that's relentlessly deflationary. And, if AI replaces jobs, people are out of work, things, we've got all, and don't get me wrong, more efficiency is a really good thing. I mean, productivity increases are great, But in the interim, yeah, there can be a lot of pain because, if there are a lot of people who are unemployed because AI has taken their job, well, those unemployed people are gonna, they're gonna vote in a way that, they're gonna want something to compensate them for that. And so, yeah, it's quite a tumultuous time. I mean, but I will say this. I mean, this whole new technology thing that's been going on for millennia. I mean, the Luddites were a bunch of people in England who rallied against the installation of weaving machines because they used to weave by hand, and of course, weaving machines were an enormous innovation. They could make a lot more cloth a lot more cheaply, but if you're a Luddite, maybe you're out of a job. I know what you should have done is learned how to repair weaving machines. But and the same will be true with AI. I mean, it will, if it does a lot of jobs that we don't want to do ourselves, and it does them cheaply and efficiently, great. And that leaves people free to do other stuff. I mean, no one would argue that, having washing machines, and everyone who's doing their wash by hand has suffered as a result of having washing machines. I mean, technological and productivity enhancements are a good thing, always. But in the interim, obviously, there are dislocations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, so there's the argument between, of course, every technological disruption creates new jobs for people, but now we're in this phase where it seems like just the rate of change is so quick, and there's a real concern of maybe these computers will be better at every human job in every capacity.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I don't entirely worry about that, and I think to the degree that automation and technology allow us all to live our best lives and not spend as much time making money, and I mean, that's something we should actually wish for. But I also don't think it's going to happen quite as quickly as, I mean, this whole thing in AI right now. I mean, these large language learning models. I mean, they're great. I mean, I use ChatGPT, I use Grok, I've used a few of the other ones. I mean, they're great. They definitely add value. They definitely move the needle forward. But the amount of capital that's going in there in terms of power and investment and everything else. I mean, it strikes me that it reminds me very much of the dot-com stuff in the 2000 era where, everyone thought we would never have enough bandwidth, that the internet was going to take over the entire world. And, there were all these companies were putting in bandwidth that went bankrupt, called, WorldCom and a few others. And I mean, these companies, large tech companies now are shoveling billions and billions of dollars into AI and AI power stuff, and in the thought that it's going to be so important and it's going to take over the world, and I think the answer is it is going to be important and it will change the world, but I think we're a little bit ahead of ourselves here because it takes it takes time. It takes time to find the best applications. I mean, look, in 2000, the internet was a really important and notable development. It was going to change the world. It did change the world, but the stocks got way ahead of themselves, and we needed to have a brutal correction and all of that until we could build the next layer up. And so I feel like there's probably a brutal correction coming in the AI area.
I wanted to briefly interrupt today's interview to give a big shout out to our lead sponsor, Rhino Bitcoin. Rhino is the all-in-one Bitcoin super app built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Buy or sell instantly. Send sats anywhere on the Lightning Network. Withdraw straight to cold storage. Even turn sats into gift cards or link to a Casa multisig, all within one sleek interface. And Rhino is just warming up. Soon, you'll pay bills, borrow against your Bitcoin, and save for retirement, all without leaving the app. Download Rhino at rhinobitcoin.com or tap the link in the description below. Use promo code Bitcoin News and Rhino will drop you $10 of free Bitcoin into your account today. Secure your stack with Rhino Bitcoin and enjoy the rest of the video. And so before you were into hard money, you were a technology investor.
Yeah, right? I was. High tech stuff, yeah.
And the whole entire name of that game is spotting trends and extrapolating how they will play out over the coming decades. So talk to us about that skill. How do you flex that muscle and what makes you good at it?
Well, I'm not sure I'm good at it, but I got lucky. I mean, what you did was, I started in that area in the early 80s. The IBM PC was released in 81. And I knew that was a big deal. I knew, even though Ken Olsen said there would never be a need for personal computers, I took the other side of that, and I was like, no, this is going to matter. I saw Lotus 123 demoed at my business school in 82, I think it was, and it was a spreadsheet, and I had just finished a couple of years on Wall Street of running numbers by hand and putting them on a green tablet, and here it did it instantly on a spreadsheet. I was like, oh my God, that is really powerful. And so, what you look for is just applications that are, better, faster, cheaper, and the PC just brought thousands of those, from the early 80s till today. I mean, it was, originally everything was green screen, then you got graphic cards, then you got charting capability, then you got, there's so many innovations, it's hard to, keep track of them all. But I was always trying to look for where dogs were eating food, and they liked what was going on, and there was a use case that was taking place. And like I said, probably the area that worked the best for me, where I got very lucky. A guy gave me a business card with an internet address on it in 1993, and I said, "What's that?" He said, "That's my internet address." And what's that? He said, "Well, you know what the internet is?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, imagine if you could, at the time there was something called Novell, which had local area networks. You could hook up your PC to other PCs in your office with a coax cable." He said, "Well, just imagine if you had Novell and you could send email to everywhere in the world." I was like, "Holy shit. That's a really big idea." And so I just went and bought everything I could in the internet space, private companies. It worked out very well. But I think, by the way, I think that's helped me in terms of understanding Bitcoin, because I see the parallels are very substantial. They're both networking businesses. There was a lot of skepticism. I remember when I was buying all those things, people were like, what is that? I don't get it. No, you don't need that. Remember what, Krugman said and so forth. So, but I could see that it was going to change the world. It was really going to be an important thing. And so, so there's a certain amount of pattern recognition where, this next network, and the monetary network that Bitcoin is establishing, it reminds me so much of the internet. It's almost like deja vu. So, I think what you want to try and find is a technical change that's unique and different, that brings some real value, and then, increased adoption, what I always call dogs eating food. So year over year, more people are using it, implying that it's a good thing. And, and then you get into these adoption curves. I've got a few of them in the book where it just kind of shows, and it goes back quite a ways. Washing machines, cell phones, computers, whatever it might be. You get your early adopters who are testing it, and the things are clunky. It doesn't really work that well. And then it gets better and better, and the technology keeps improving, and pretty soon everybody has it. It's just like obvious. How can you live without a cell phone? And so, the original phones were flip phones. Hell, the original phone was the one that Michael Douglas had in Wall Street, with a big brick that he was carrying around on the beach. My boss had one of those, and I remember at the time that the per minute rate was like $1.50. So, and he was an important guy, and occasionally he had to do things, and so he'd get on the phone and he'd make a 10-minute phone call for $15, and from anywhere, and that was cool. And think about what that is today. We all have phones. We can make calls all around the world, for $30 a month. Effectively, it's free almost. So, so you just kind of look for these technology trends that are emerging, and more usage. And in the Bitcoin area, that's one of the things I look at most carefully is how fast is it growing in terms of users, applications, adoption. And I've seen nothing that indicates that it's slowing down. In fact, I would argue it's the other way. It's kind of accelerating, modestly, but accelerating. And so, that tells me that, just let this play itself out. And I think most people in the world now know what they've heard of it. You'd have to be living in a cave. Well, in the Western world, I should say, in the developed world, you'd have to be living in a cave to not be aware that Bitcoin exists. Mm-hmm. But I would say that the people that know that they need it, the percentage of those people who know that it exists, that then also understand that they really need it. Still, what has it got to be? 1%, 2%, 5%? It's small, right? Yeah. And I think that what's going to happen is, the part that doesn't know they need it, they're going to learn that they need it. And so as they do, and because, we've got this, it's fixed in supply, as as everyone knows, and nobody's ever seen anything like this before, because all the commodities, the supply will grow if the price goes up. Well, this is one where the price will go up and the supply won't grow. Mm-hmm. The supply's algorithmically set at 21 million coins. Price can go to wherever, it doesn't matter. There aren't any more of them. So, yeah, it's that's why I think Saylor's insight that it's going up forever, Laura, to me, that's one of the hardest things for people who are looking at it for the first time to get their arms around. I can't tell you how many friends I have who say, well, yeah, I know I should have bought it, but I didn't. You told me to, I didn't. But you bought it at 10,000, it's 100. How can I pay 100 for it? I'm paying too much. I'm like, you're looking at it wrong. I paid 10,000 for it. Max Kaiser bought it at $1. And in 10 years, if you buy it at 100 and it's at $1 million, somebody's gonna say, oh shit, I can't pay $1 million for it. You paid 100,000 for it. Yeah. It's just the nature of the beast. So.
Yeah, and we touched upon the point that we are seeing the network grow, right? We are
Right.
seeing adoption grow, and we want that.
Right.
But we're entering into this phase of institutions like
Yeah.
ETFs and Bitcoin treasury companies, and they're just vacuuming up coins, and then they're sitting on them.
Yeah.
So, do you think that Bitcoin needs to be used more as a medium of exchange to really take the adoption to the next level?
That's a great issue and a great point up for debate. And I mean, I can kind of see both sides. I mean, I think, Jeff Booth is a very strong believer that he's a friend, and he's a very strong believer that, we've absolutely got to get the medium of exchange piece going because it just gets it inside everybody's head. To be frank, I'm kind of with Saylor. Right now, it's just pristine digital capital, it's digital gold. The medium of exchange thing isn't that important, but so I can see both sides of this argument. I think that it will become, first of all, it's growing as a medium of exchange. I mean, all the Bitcoin shows I go to, I just buy things out of my Strike wallet, on Lightning. And you're seeing more and more medium of exchange use cases. And in third world countries, actually, it's pretty heavily used as a medium of exchange. There's a part of my book where I talk about Nairobi, where they've got a terrible currency, and a lot of people are conducting their lives on a Bitcoin standard, using Lightning wallets. So it is there. The medium of exchange piece is there. And I think it will continue to grow as time goes by. And I think it's just another way that it'll creep into everybody's consciousness. I mean, and I think eventually it will be the medium of exchange. I think eventually the dollar will be gone. It'll be kind of a relic. And I've said this before. I think my kids and grandkids will price things in Satoshis. I mean, how many, that sandwich, oh, that's 5 Satoshis or whatever it is. I mean, I just think these other monetary things will go away. And the reason I say that is that, humankind has this history of when you find something better, everyone kind of migrates towards it. And, now, it could take time. I mean, this isn't, money touches every part of society, and it's very, very viral, and got a huge network effect, and it's got a huge, Lindy effect going backwards so that the dollar's got tons and tons of momentum. So we're not going to turn this thing over in 5 years or 10 years, but in 20 years, 30 years, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure that, that Bitcoin will be kind of the true North monetary standard. That's my belief.
Yeah, it's you use Bitcoin as you need it, right? And us
Right,
in the West, we need a savings vehicle.
right,
People in Africa need a way to buy a loaf of bread, right?
right,
Without a bank account. So I
right.
think as time goes on, we will use it more as a medium of exchange here as well.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I try to, whenever I can, whenever anybody accepts Bitcoin, I pay in Bitcoin. And then I replace it with, I take fiat from obviously we all have fiat accounts. You can't really live paying for everything in Bitcoin. It's very hard to do. But it's very easy to take my fiat, send it to my Strike wallet, and buy more Bitcoin. So yeah, I try to use it whenever possible, and and I use it to orange pill people. I mean, I try to, people who don't get it. I mean, I find myself in a lot of service institutions, restaurants particularly, where I say, well, I'm going to give you the tip, and here's, put on the credit card, but I'd like to give you a little extra tip if you learn about Bitcoin, right? And they said, what is it? Well, okay, so you got a phone? Yeah, okay. So here, download this Strike wallet. Okay, set it up. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Great. I'm going to send you $5 worth of Bitcoin to your Strike wallet right now.
Hmm.
And it just plants the seed, right? And they're kind of
Yeah.
like, oh, that's interesting. How'd you do that? How'd that happen so fast?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's so again, it's to me, we're racing because fiat and CBDCs are making the world a terrible place, and the governments are trying to push CBDCs, and we're kind of in a race with them. So we got to get as much of the world as possible to see our side of it and be using our side of it and recognize that this is the right way to go. I mean, as you alluded to those socialists who think the problem is not enough government. We got to show them no. The problem is too much government. And here's how you beat it. So
Yeah, and just to finish that up, I think one big mantra of the last couple of years is never sell your Bitcoin, right?
oh
That's a
yeah,
famous Michael Saylor line. But no, you got to spend it. You got to use it. You got to get comfortable with it. Learn how to use a wallet,
absolutely.
send a transaction, and
Well, and it's very easy. I mean, the way I think of it is, I mean, I kind of have like, you got two parts. I mean, you got your cold storage savings Bitcoin. That's a number you're just never going to touch. You're just going to let that grow forever, and your kids are going to be really glad you did it. And then you got your wallet, which you've got a few sets laying over there, and you spend them, and then you refresh it, and you spend them, and you refresh it. So And they're just different. They're different use cases. One is for store of value, and the other is for medium of exchange.
There you go.
Yeah.
And yeah, now I'd like to talk about the
Sure.
title of the book, The
Yeah.
Big Print, right? You say that the monetary event is coming within 18 months,
Yeah,
possibly.
I know. I said that. I'm out on a limb here. I could be wrong. It might take longer. I mean, but I feel like it won't be. And we're seeing, you're already seeing little cracks in the dam. I mean, the Fed was doing 25 billion a month of QT, quantitative tightening, which is they're letting bonds roll off and not repurchasing them. And they took that down to five. And then in the last couple of days, the Fed came out with a paper where they talked about changing it. This is kind of technical stuff and something that the banks do, which is the supplementary leverage ratio, which is really kind of a rule that the banks have about how much capital they have to hold in relation to the things they own. And they were talking about changing the rules and making it looser and easier for banks to buy treasury bonds. And this is all because the government's trapped and they have a treasury bond problem. They've got 9 trillion of treasury bonds coming due. And guess what? Since they're close to bankrupt and everyone can see it, nobody's really excited about holding those treasury bonds anymore. And so we're already seeing some indications that they're leaning towards the big print. Then the more recent one is, you got Trump beating on Jay Powell, who's enormously political. I mean, how was he able to justify cutting rates 50 basis points before the election when inflation was higher than it is now, but not justify cutting them now when all the metrics have gone in a direction where he should be? I mean, and of course that's upset Trump, and rightly so. And so he's all over him, but Powell probably won't move, because he's political and he wants to hold his ground and go down as another Paul Volcker. But, Trump has kind of figured out a counter move to that, which is to say, he might appoint a Fed chairman, somebody who he knows and likes, and that Fed chairman could almost start saying, well, guys, don't worry, all you got to hang on is until May of next year, which is now, less than 12 months away. And, we're gonna cut rates and go back to QE, and the money's going to flow. I mean, in fact, I think some of that action might account for why the stock market has behaved so well and has recovered so quickly from, the threat of World War III.
Yeah,
So,
that's the threat of the shadow Fed, right? The
exactly.
shadow
That's what
Fed
you're talking about,
governor.
calling it the Shadow Federal Reserve Chairman. I mean, Powell must be ripshit about this whole concept, but, frankly, he's kind of brought it upon himself. So I don't really feel too sorry for him.
And so, yes, let's talk about these treasuries. And
Yeah.
it seems as if the government is going all in on stablecoins, right? The Genius Act just
Yeah.
passed the Senate, and they see that Tether is a top 20 holder of US treasuries now.
Right.
And so, what do you think about stablecoins? Is it a way just to continue the reign of the dollar, or do you think this will help usher in hyper Bitcoinization?
Well, yeah, so that's a great question. There are a bunch of different layers to that. So, look, the stablecoin market, and there was a good article in the journal this morning, is about $250 billion a year. And the stablecoin issuers, Circle and Tether being the two largest ones, hold a ton of treasuries. And so that's an automatic bid for 250, billion dollars. Although actually Tether owns some gold and some Bitcoin, some other stuff. And interestingly, in that stablecoin act, they said to Tether, you got to clean up your act to become more U.S. compliant and have audit and everything else. It'll be interesting to see if Tether complies with that or not. But we also saw Besant recently saying that he thinks the stablecoin market should and could really grow. And so they're very supportive of it. And the obvious reason for that is they got a lot of treasuries to sell, and stablecoins are buyers of treasuries. And so, but right now, think of the numbers. Stablecoins are 250 billion today. They're trying to finance real roll over 9 trillion. So 250 is 1/4 of 1 billion, and they got to roll over 9 times that, right? So, yeah, 1/4 of 1 trillion. So they got to roll over, 9 trillion. So it's still small, but I think what you're seeing is a recognition on the part of Besant, Trump, and the administration that we are in a debt problem, and that the way to solve for a debt problem is to reset the currency against sound money, and which is really the only thing you can reset against. The two forms of sound money are gold and Bitcoin. As you note, they're both at close to record highs. I mean, they're both bumping right up against their record highs, and I think they're going to both go much higher. And so, and this is what Roosevelt did in the 30s. I mean, he reset against gold. He depreciated the dollar against gold. The other thing that's interesting to note, and it just came out, and I just focused on it because Lynn tweeted it, was, the dollar's been getting killed this year, and in compared to other fiat currencies. But so it's getting killed compared to other fiat currencies. It's getting killed compared to gold. It's getting killed compared to Bitcoin. So, basically, when you've got a lot of debt that you can't service, you've got to have inflation to make the debt more serviceable. And so that's why you get a Paul Tudor Jones, a brilliant hedge fund guy, gets on CNBC and says all roads lead to inflation, and I completely agree with him. And then his next line is, and by the way, Bitcoin is the fastest horse in the inflation race. And gold's right behind it. So, and commodities are behind gold. So, stable coins, I think it makes sense for the government to push stable coins. Now, do stable coins fundamentally solve the problem? No. They're really just, all they really are is they're just tied. They're really just a crypto form of the dollar. I mean, the reason that stable coins exist, as best I can tell, is that, the SWIFT system, and I actually learned about this a lot when I was in Prague, because I had a meeting with a lot of Russians in it. And what they told me was that, when Russia got kicked out, we grabbed the Russian assets and they got kicked out of SWIFT, every single company or oligarch or business in Russia had created a Binance account with stablecoins in it, because they still have to do business. They still have to pay one another, but they can't do wire transfers on SWIFT anymore. And so what you're really seeing is that, the stable coins are just a digital dollar going over the crypto rails. And, that makes perfect sense. And I think that market could become a lot larger. I mean, it's fast, it's instantaneous. Probably the fees are lower than the SWIFT system, et cetera, et cetera. So, it does kind of continue to promote dollar usage as medium of exchange, but the dollar can still fail as a store of value against the two best stores of value in the world, Bitcoin and gold, respectively. So, and if the dollar hyperinflates, your stablecoin is going to hyperinflate, because all the stablecoin is really just backed by a treasury bill. And if that treasury bill becomes worthless, well, your stablecoin's worthless. So, you can't take your eye off the ball, which is that there are a couple of forms of sound money here, Bitcoin and gold. And then there's stable coins, which, they are kind of claiming are sound money, but they're really not, because they're linked to the dollar, and they're backed by a dollar security, dollar derivative security, treasury bills. So stable coins are not going to save the dollar, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. But, isn't it interesting that the government's kind of on our side in supporting, to the degree that more and more people become comfortable with stable coins, they also, by extension, become comfortable with crypto, and they also, therefore, by extension, become more comfortable with Bitcoin. And so, it all plays into the thesis that we are moving to a digital financial world. Oh, and guess what? What's the rock solid 10-year treasury of the digital financial world? It's Bitcoin. So, I put the stablecoin thing as it's a net positive for Bitcoin. It's a net positive for all the things we're trying to do. But don't fool yourself into thinking that a stable coin really has value, because it doesn't. It's a derivative of the dollar.
Yeah.
So,
and if I had to put on my tinfoil hat, you've heard Trump on the campaign trail say no to CBDCs.
yes.
Jerome Powell has said no to CBDCs. I think even Elizabeth Warren is against it. But at the end of the day, there's not much difference between stablecoins proliferating across America and a top-down CBDC, right? These things can still be surveilled.
Yeah, they're very similar, except that they're not controlled by the government per se. But the government could come into Binance or the Circle or Tether, and certainly probably has their hooks in there and probably would like to see what's going on. True CBDC, they would be able to see the ledger and know where everything is going. And the stablecoin, as I understand it, is outside of government oversight. But I could be wrong about that. I don't know what backdoors and hooks they have to notice where the stable coins are going. But yeah, it's it is what it is. I'm not so sure. I think at the end of the day, Elizabeth Warren would have liked to have CBDCs, but I think she's had to back off on that, and that's a good thing. But yeah.
And then just to finish up on the dollar, you're right. It has gotten clobbered this year. I mean, we're at
10%.
97.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, down 10%. But it's a funny game because fiat is all relative, right? I
Yes.
mean, you want your America does need a weaker dollar to pay off this debt, but we still want to be the strongest of all the other fiats. So can you talk about that situation?
Well, yeah. I mean, it goes into my friend Brent's talk about kind of the dollar milkshake, and I've always, the dollar is and always was the strongest of all the fiats because we had more dollar denominated debt. We were the reserve currency. Everyone needed, dollars to pay their debt. And so there was a natural underlying bid. But that's all being taken away because when we grab the Russian assets, people realize that, oh my God, if I hold this government debt or I hold dollars as reserves, the U.S. can cancel them or grab them. I mean, I'm sure the Chinese have thought about that. They've got, just under $1 trillion worth of our debt. I'm sure they've wondered what happens if we just decide to cancel the Chinese debt. We're not going to pay it. Now, that would be an act of war. But, we've done a lot of crazy shit before. But I always argue with Brent. And I'm like, Brent, the dollar index really doesn't matter because it's just crappy dollar fiat against crappy euro fiat against the Japanese yen fiat against the British pound fiat against the Chinese yuan fiat. They're all fiat. But it does matter on a trade basis because if we could get the dollar down substantially, that would make all our imports more expensive. It'd be inflation for us, but we'd import less. And it would make all our exports more competitive and we'd, export more. So it does matter relative to the others in that sense. But I've always said the cross that really matters is, of course, the dollar gold and the dollar Bitcoin, because that's the neutral reserve cross. And the dollar really is a worthless piece of paper. I mean, we've got 37 trillion of debt. We've got another 150 of unrecognized debt in the sense of future liabilities that aren't on the balance sheet. And we're running a huge deficit. I mean, and it's only getting bigger. I mean, the May deficit just came out. It was the third highest on record. The only other 2 years that were higher were in the middle of the pandemic and we're spending like crazy. So, it's a case of, the dollar, I think, is going to trend towards worthlessness. I mean, it's already lost 98% of its value against gold from, the beginning of the century, and it's going to lose the rest. But, the question, at what time and on what slope, I don't know. But yeah, look, it's all fiat, and all fiat is going to go to zero, compared to sound money. I mean,
Yes.
I think that will happen. What is hard to figure out and debate it, we have a lot of debate about it, is the time scale. And as you said, in the big print, I said, I think it happens in 18 months. I'm a little nervous that I've always been a little bit early. I mean, I thought we were going to go to massive inflation after 2008, and they figured out a way to bottle it up by paying money in excess reserves. But, I could be wrong. It could take longer. I mean, I'm pretty sure within a 5-year window I'm right. But, and it would seem to me that, as I watch what's unfolding with the Trump administration, what I think they're going to try and do, I think they are probably going to go with the shadow Fed chairman. I think Powell's going to hold his ground. I think the market's going to just look around Powell and go, okay, just take on the leverage. We don't have to worry about it because when new Fed chairman comes in, the money's going to flow again in spades. And, then they're going to have, QE. And I mean, then we're off to the races. And that truly is the big print. So what is that now? May. Yeah. So it's, 11 months from now. Maybe 10 months from now because we're almost through June. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it. But, predicting the future shit's hard. And I've been wrong a lot, but I am very comfortable with this. I'm very comfortable with the trend toward higher inflation and toward monetary debasement. I haven't seen anything that would indicate to me that politicians are suddenly getting more responsible. I mean, a perfect example is look at this big, beautiful bill. I mean, it's just, or look at Doge. I mean, Doge, that was a nice idea. We're going to save 2 trillion. No, we're going to save 1 trillion. Well, maybe we'll save 300, billion. Oh, well, no, maybe it's 150. And then Elon says, oh, fuck it, I give up.
Yeah. And then
right?
It ends with a fight on Twitter.
Yeah. And then he gets in a fist fight with Dissent, who basically says you're a fraud. So, yeah, I mean, it's a very, very, and Trump comes in about cutting, spending, everything else. So our military budget's going up this year, and we're talking about spending on a big new fighter program, which I'm just like, really, guys? I mean, I mean, if you listen to Eric Prince and some of the smart military guys who say, look, these big weapon systems, that's not where it's at in the future. I mean, you got these little drones that can take them out. You build a $70 million fighter jet, and you got a $3,000 drone that can attack it and take it out. I mean, really? I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Are we really thinking through how to best defend ourselves? And I would be willing to guess that the answer is no. And the reason we're spending all this money is because the military-industrial complex has bases in 50 countries, has stuff going in 50 states, and they give huge amounts of money to all of our elected representatives, and our elected representatives, keep the money flowing to them, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, on a personal level, we all have to prepare for this in some way, right?
Yeah.
And of course, hard money, Bitcoin, gold. But in terms of allocation, what would you say there? And in terms of outside of just putting money in certain vehicles, what can you do to get ready? Because things are changing quickly.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it, you're waiting. That's everyone's, I can't theoretically give investment advice on a broad scale, but I just say, I think in general, you want to, I say to my clients, I say, you want to own stuff the government can't print. So the government can't print Bitcoin, the government can't print gold, the government can't print real estate. They can tax it, which is a negative. And the government can't print equities, although companies can issue more equity and dilute you, which is a negative. But so those are those are kind of the categories that I consider to be investable today. I think that most people want to save. In my view, the best savings vehicle in the world is Bitcoin. If you can stand the volatility and have a long-term time frame, I think it will outperform every other asset class massively without even doing anything. I mean, it doesn't have a management team. I think the risks have really been shaken out of it. I mean, all the adoption. I mean, the ETF adoption, the corporate adoption, the Bitcoin Treasury Company adoption, the strategic reserve, and the way our government's talking. I mean, it's really kind of stunning. I watched Saylor's speech over in Prague, and I mean, I recommend everyone go listen to that. It's very powerful. I mean, there's just so many things that a couple of years ago we would have thought, gosh, if somebody had told me this would happen, I would have been shocked. And they've all happened to support Bitcoin. So, in the book, I think I said that if people, and I was aiming the book a little bit at kind of my generation of boomers in the U.S. who own a lot of stocks. And I talk to these people a lot because they're my friends, and most of them really, they own a lot of stocks. They've done well, especially if they had the Mag 7. And I said, do you own any gold? No. Do you own any Bitcoin? No. And I was kind of like, if you don't have maybe 20 or 30% of your assets in something that protects you against inflation, I feel like you're going to experience regret, in the next 10 years because, and I get it. They don't because they're coming off, they're making the mistake. There are trends that last 20, 30, 40 years. And, trends that last 10 years. But we've had a 40-year deflationary trend that I think ended in March of 2020. And so now, we're 5 years into the new trend, which I think is an inflationary trend. I think it's going to last at least 10 years. It could last 20, 30 years. And so everyone's still investing like we're in that old 40-year downtrend where bonds worked, stocks worked. You didn't need gold. You didn't need Bitcoin. And so that's all changed. And so I try to convince my peers that, guys, if you don't have some of this, you're going to regret it, because this is not, we're not, everyone says, well, it's not different this time. Yeah, it is different this time. I mean, Saylor, in his speech, he made a really great point. I mean, yeah, in investing, it's true. A lot of things aren't different this time, except that, when they invented electricity, it was different this time, is what he said. I mean, when you have a new invention that changes the rules of the game, it is different. And this is a new invention, and it has changed the rules of the game. And so if you're still playing the old game, I think that's going to cost you. So I would just advise everybody to, I tell my clients, some of whom are very resistant, because I run a gold fund, a gold stock mining fund, and I tell them that, just get some Bitcoin. I mean, it doesn't have to be 20 or 30% of your portfolio. I mean, get 1%, 5%, 10%. Because I know that once they do that, they'll start to study it and think about it, and then they'll see it go up, and they'll think, hey, you know what? Maybe I need to own more of this. Yeah. I mean, that's how we all started. I mean, when I bought it in 2014, I was like, I'm not so sure about this thing. Is this going to survive? Technically, I mean, it's risky, but we're way beyond that stage. So yeah, I think everybody needs to own some Bitcoin. It's really kind of a no-brainer. Now, how much Bitcoin you own, I mean, that depends on your age, your risk tolerance, your understanding of it, etc. I mean, my investable assets, it's probably about 70%. of what I've got today. Now, it's interesting, though, it didn't start there. I mean, I never said, okay, I'm going to just take 70% of my money and dump it into Bitcoin. It started much less and then it went up a lot. And so, and the other stuff didn't go up as fast. And so suddenly it kind of crowded out the other stuff and I never sold any. So, so I think everybody's case is different. You need to think about where you are and your, so, I mean, that's the other thing I would say to you, and this is an important point, is that you need to understand the cycles and the timing and the nature of the drawdowns. I mean, the only time I've ever seen anybody get hurt in Bitcoin is when they buy near the top. They use leverage to do so. They're absolutely convinced it's going to the moon. Then they get a drawdown. They beat themselves up. They think they screwed up, and they blow it out at the bottom. You know what I mean? I mean, that's how you get hurt in Bitcoin. And so, that's another way when people are asking, well, how much should I put in? I say, look, this asset's gone down 90%, 80%, 70%. Recent one was 70%. I'm not even sure we'll see a 70% drawdown again. I think we'll probably see 50 or 60 though, off of a very big spike. I mean, we could go to 300 and draw back to 150, which is a 50% drawdown. I said, you gotta, if you're buying it, you have to think to yourself, if this goes down 50%, it's not going to change my life. I can live with that, and I'm going to think, wow, I should buy some more. It's cheap. Not, oh, I screwed up and I'm going to sell it. You know what I mean? You've got to have that kind of a mentality about it. And I think that's important to emphasize as Bitcoiners trying to convince others. I think we have to make them aware of that risk because, those of us who've hodled through 3 or 4 drawdowns, it's kind of like old hat. Oh, yeah, the thing's drawdown. I mean, I remember, in fact, just recently, like what did we do? In December, we went to 106 or something. And then there was a time earlier this year we went down to 75, and I had some friends going, oh my God, what am I doing? It's going to 50. I got to pay. It's like, no. You're thinking about this all wrong. Do you have any available cash to buy it with? This is a buying opportunity, not a time to sell it, right? And that's the nature of it. I mean, it's going up for a long, long time. And a good comparable with this, Amazon was the same kind of thing. There's just tons of drawdowns in Amazon, but if you held it through those drawdowns, it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And that was because of the network effect, and that's what's going on here.
Yeah, you need to study the asset, put time into it, and then you get more comfortable.
Exactly.
And those dips become, I need to buy opportunities, not
I'm scared, I'm wrong opportunities. Yeah, exactly.
And so you have now entered into this new level as being an author of a Bitcoin book.
I never thought that would happen, yeah.
You've orange pilled a lot of people now.
Hopefully.
And is there any particular person or story you'd like to share about orange pilling a certain person? I mean, for me, on your journey, I listened to multiple episodes of you on Quoth the Raven with Chris.
Oh,
Irons.
I love Chris. He's fantastic. And I think I didn't orange pill him soul-handedly, but I played a role for sure.
Yeah. Because
I remember in the beginning he was quite skeptical, and I kept saying, "No, dude, you got to think this through, man." And he came around on it, Oh, I don't know. No, I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, "Oh, you helped me with my father." I've had a lot of people reach out to me and ask me to talk to their parents, and I think I've been one of the better people for older folks because I am older. I'm 68, and for gold folks, because I get gold. I believe in gold. Gold's great. I love gold. I got a lot of gold, but this is better. And so I've tried to attack that camp as well. No, there's nothing specifically. I mean, that I can really think of. But I'm just going to keep on doing it. I feel like we can't save everybody, but for those who are willing to study and listen, you really can protect your family, and that's really what it's all about. I mean, it's and it's better than that too, because it's not just about number go up and protecting your wealth. Although let's not kid ourselves, that matters to all of us. It's also about, you get to vote with your money. Our vote at the ballot booth doesn't really mean very much because often we have 2 pretty shitty choices. But if you vote with your money to take it out of the banks, take it out of their system, and use this alternative system that's clearly fair and clearly better, and that's a small, if we all did that, I mean, Jeff Booth once said to me, he said, Larry, if we get everybody to do this, the whole damn thing would collapse and we'd be on a Bitcoin stand. He's right. But we're not even anywhere close to that. So, but I think what, people have to understand is that, every one of us does get that vote. And that's why people say to me, well, what can I do? What can I do to help out? Well, I think the thing that everybody can do, everyone has friends and everyone has relatives and everybody has contacts. And so, you want to try and make the world a better place? Great. You've been lucky enough to study this thing, understand this thing, to believe in this thing. do just, I mean, somebody did it to me way back when, and then Safe wrote his book, and that did it to me. And, it's just like spread the word, I mean, friends help friends out, right? Like, hey, I know you're hurting, money wise. Have you ever thought about this as a way to, to maybe improve your condition? It makes a lot of sense. You should read these books. You should think this through. I mean, I've had multiple clients. I have a CrossFit trainer, a really good guy, helps me with weightlifting and getting in shape and everything else. And I orange pilled him a couple years ago. And he said, I'm having a hard time orange pilling my dad. And I said, well, let me talk to him and help him out. And dad had a nice retirement account, but, wasn't earning much on it and this, that, and the other. And I think at the time the coins were like 25K or something. So it was a while back when it was coming off that $15,000 drawdown. And, I finally convinced the dad to go out and buy some coins, and he did, and now the guy's like, Jesus Christ, this is great. I mean, you bought a handful of coins at 25 and it's 100. Well, that moved the needle,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, there are going to be a lot more stories like that, because it's going to be at 300 and you bought them at 100 and you're going to feel real good about it. So, yeah, I mean, to me, I mean, it's like you're doing it with your podcast, right? We're all, another thing Jeff has always said to me, I love this too, is that we all work for each other. I mean, I like the fact that Michael Saylor works for me. You know what I mean? And you work for me, and I work for you, and I write books. We all bring something different to the party, but we've got this revolution going on with this better system, and we're spreading the word. And so, really all we got to do is, as Michael says, we got to cheerfully and constructively, tell the doubters or explain to the doubters why we're right, and why, the sooner they join us, the better off they'd be. I mean, I'll never forget, I was doing something with Max Kaiser where I told him I had a lot of Bitcoin, or a fair amount of Bitcoin, but I also had a lot of gold. He said, so you're not all in yet? You're not 100%? I said, no. And he's like, well, you'll learn, I mean, this was a bunch of years ago, and he was right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was absolutely right.
Yeah. And so as we close out here,
Yeah.
paint a picture, right? We're going to have to go through this big print.
Yeah.
You say by the mid 2030s, might have a currency collapse, right? But on the other end, we're hoping for something better. And
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be so much better. Oh my God. Yeah. No,
so yeah, let's paint this picture. What does the
yeah,
world
it's
look like
going
on
to
a
be
Bitcoin
so much
standard?
better. There'll be no Federal Reserve. The price of everything will be fair. You won't have all this monetary premium in homes. Young people will be able to afford things. You won't have to worry about inflation. I mean, I'm already kind of personally living on a Bitcoin stand. I got to tell you, it feels great. I mean, even as recently before Bitcoin, I was kind of like, well, how am I going to retire and know that what happened to my dad is going to happen to me? What happened to my dad is he retired with a number that was an okay number, but by the time he passed, it's like it really kind of gotten whittled away because of inflation. Do you know what I mean? And when you're on the Bitcoin standard, that doesn't happen to you anymore. And so it's a very positive thing, and you start to suddenly realize that, hey, I mean, I think in life, I think for a lot of human beings, one of their greatest fears is, am I gonna make it? Do I have enough money? Am I gonna be solvent? Can I take care of my family? That's pretty persistent fear throughout society. And I think once you get into Bitcoin, you really understand it, and you start to build a stack of it. You start to realize that, hey, you know what? It's gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. I got this thing. They're not stealing money from me. It's gonna get more valuable over time, and if I want to work to earn more of it, that's great. I'll do that. But if I want to retire with what I've got, knowing that that'll cover me, that's good too. So I think on the other side of it all, we're going to have just an enormous boost of productivity, fairness, honesty. A lot of the stuff associated with fiat is just going to go away. The government, I think government's going to lose a lot of its power. How are they going to pay for wars? I mean, it's a beautiful tool for stripping power away from government. It really is. It's just so great. And everyone says, well, they're going to come take it from your tax. And I'm like, good luck. Good luck, government. You guys you can't get the most basic shit right. I'm not too worried about, you coming after my Bitcoin. So, I feel like all other fourth turnings, I mean, the negative, to be totally fair, the negative potential, though, is that somewhere between that here and that Valhalla that I'm describing, there would probably be a couple of very difficult years where, the old system is breaking and lashing out, and if you want a picture of that and how bad it could look, read the book The Mandibles by Lionel Shriver. I mean, it's, and I don't think that's what's going to happen. But you don't. I mean, history shows that when you go through these big tumultuous changes in society and the way it's run, there are upheavals and there's a cost. I mean, in the last one it was the World War and a lot of people died. I don't think a lot of people have to die in this one. I think there could be a lot of economic pain though. Very, very high inflation, and I think some of the people who were extremely rich are going to find out they're not as rich as they thought they were. So that's the bad news, but honestly, you don't get to the other side without enduring the pain, and the pain, it's deserved in the sense that we've lived beyond our means for a long time with all this debt. And so, I mean, the biggest pain is going to be meted out to the people who own the debt, because the debt is effectively worthless. It really is. So, anybody who's living off a bond portfolio, good luck. You're gonna suffer.
As you say, the bond market is a sucker's game, right?
It really is. It's terrible. Yeah.
But yeah, you're completely right. The sooner you get on to Bitcoin, you start stacking, you start learning, getting into meetups, meeting people, and joining the physical Bitcoin network, right? Like
Yeah. Oh,
getting to
yeah.
know these people. You're meeting some of the smartest, most hopeful, and curious people
Oh,
in the world.
Bitcoin people are great. I mean, these shows are fun. I've made a ton of friends in Bitcoin on Twitter. I mean, it's just, I think Bitcoiners in general are positive, optimistic people, that see a better system and are just like, we only get frustrated in the sense that we're not, we can't drag people along as quickly as we'd like. A lot of people are resistant to it. But, what I would say, I mean, I've also observed this. I mean, I've had a lot of people who I thought, well, I'd never get them into it. And, maybe I started working on them 5 years ago. Now they're Bitcoiners. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like never give up. Just kind of, and they're going to hear it from different, and then, these little objections fall away. I mean, one of the big objections was the government's going to kill it. Well, then the government established an ETF. Oh, well, maybe the government's not going to kill it. So, right? I mean, now the big one is quantum and quantum computing and that risk. And everything I read and study and hear, and talking to Saylor and others, I mean, I don't think that's as big a risk as people think. To the degree that it becomes a risk, I think they can upgrade the security on the coin, the coin addresses, and they can do a hard fork into the new security regimen. So, to me, what is it? Saylor says you want to buy something that is inevitable, but that nobody really understands it yet. And to me, this is inevitable, but nobody understands it. You can't stop it, but most people don't really get it yet. And so, as they come to get it, they're going to come and pay you more for the coins you own. So,
Yes, well, let's leave it there. Larry,
hey,
thank you so much for your
thank
time.
you, Rob. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Yes, and if people want to find out more, get the big print,
Yeah,
find you
thanks.
on X, where do they go?
Oh, yeah, just on X, I'm Lawrence Lepard, and the big print is on Amazon right now. It's all formats, audio plus the hardcover, softcover, and the EPUB, the Kindle version. So I appreciate the support on that. I mean, I think it is a good tool for orange pilling your friends if you're already a Bitcoiner. I try to write it in a style, in a way that makes it easy to understand, but yet is compelling that it's something we need to do.
Absolutely. It's accessible, I think is the best word
Yeah, I think
for
you're
it.
probably right. I mean, by the way, some other great books have been written. I mean, Safe's book and Lynn's book and Jeff's books, they're all just fabulous books. And I drew heavily from those guys, by the way. And what I tried to do was I try to write, I wouldn't call it Bitcoin for dummies. I would just say, the concise manifesto on why this really matters. And, so I drew the highlights of all these other books and put them in here, the Creature from Jekyll Island, etc. And so I really just try to lay it out very, very, step one, step two, step three. I mean, the system's broken. It stinks. And, first half of the book's kind of depressing, frankly. It's like, this is fucked up. But second half of the book is very optimistic, right? There's a way out. You can protect yourself. We can fix it. We're all on the same team. And we were going to fix it. I mean, whether I'd written the book or not, this was going to happen. I wrote it because I want to accelerate the happening. I mean, I'm not going to be here forever, and I want my kids to live in a better, economic environment than the one they're in right now. So,
Well, yes, we're all doing our part. Larry, thank
exactly.
you.
We
Thank you
all
so
work
much
for
for
each
your
other,
time.
Rob.
We all learn for each other. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Larry. It's
Thanks.
been
Take care.
great.